Okay, so today's lesson is just more about two-step equations. Two-step equations are not always nice and neat like the ones we've done so far, so we're going to look at some two-step equations that look a little bit different. Let's see, today is the 24th. Okay, so I have just some more complicated examples for you, things that include some of our integer rules, maybe some decimals and fractions. So on my first one, I have 5n minus a negative 16 equals 100. Before I solve that, I need to simplify that. Jake's not here. Casey, when I have minus and negative, what is that? What's that mean to do? Think back to our integer rules. David?
Minus negative is plus or positive.
Right, minus and negative just means plus. So we're going to rewrite this before we solve it as 5n plus 16 equals 100. Okay, now it's just a regular two-step equation that we can solve somewhat quickly. Michael, can you tell me what I would do first to solve this two-step equation?
You would subtract 16 from 100.
Good, and from 16. So you always want to say that you're going to subtract it from both sides, because that's what you're doing. You can't just do it to one side of the equation. So we end up with 5n. What is 100 minus 16?
84.
Good, 84. Anna, what do we do next?
You would have to divide 5 to both sides.
Good, divide both sides by 5. And when we do 84 divided by 5, that's not going to work out evenly, so we could actually leave this as 84 fifths if you wanted to, because that is reduced to its simplest form. We could make it a mixed number, or we could divide it. You can use your calculator even for that, and you would get an answer of 16.8. But it's perfectly acceptable to leave it in this form. But it's also okay if you divide it and you give me the decimal. Okay, the next one just has some decimals in it. First question, Brian.
116 4/5 be good?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, Trey, what would I do first to solve this one?
Minus 15 on this side.
Good. Subtract 15 from both sides. So I'm left with y over 4.25. What is negative 17 minus 15?
Negative 32.
Good. Negative 32. Taylor, what do I do next?
Or add 32.
No, remember my goal is to get y by itself,
Yeah.
so I have to get rid of this.
Multiply.
Yes, multiply by 4.25. So we do the same thing on this side. So y equals, I will not ask anyone to do this in your head, equals negative 136. Okay, last one, we have fractions. I'm going to change colors so we can, it doesn't run into that one. So we have 2/3 x plus 1/5 equals 3/4. We're going to do the same thing, it's just going to be a little more complicated now that we have fractions. Avery, what would I do first to solve that problem? Good. I'm going to subtract 1/5 on both sides. Now I'm still going to have 2/3 x on this side equals. I need to get a common denominator, so I'm going to use 20 as my common denominator. I'm going to have 15 twentieths minus 4 twentieths, and I'm going to get 11 twentieths. Now, volunteer, how do I get rid of this 2/3 in front of the x? Brian?
Divide by 2/3.
Divide by 2/3, and that's the same as multiplying by?
Which is pretty much multiplying by 3 halves.
3 halves, good. It's the same as multiplying by 3 halves. So I multiply by the reciprocal to get rid of a fraction in front of a variable. Okay, so 3/2 times 2/3 cancels out. It becomes 1x. So we just have x. I look to see if I can cross simplify, and I cannot. 11 times 3 is 33. 20 times 2 is 40. So x equals 33 over 40. Okay, any questions? Okay. Now I want you to look at the problems on the next slide, which are a completely different type of problem. So we have to think about what order of operations would tell us to do first and second, and then we have to do it in reverse. So if we were going to solve this problem, say it had a number in there. Say it was 4 plus, let's say 4 times 2 over 5. What would I do first using order of operations? Nick? I would do the 4 times 2, and then what would I do? Not yet. What about this? So, good. I'd have to add together all this stuff on the top before I could divide by 5. So I would add first. That would be my first step. My second step would be to divide. So whenever you solve a problem like this, you have to do the opposite. We're going to undo the division first, and then we're going to undo the addition or subtraction. Because of the way this is written, the whole left side is divided by 5. So we can't just add 4 to both sides because it's not really 4, it's really 4/5. Okay, so the first step is we're going to multiply both sides by 5. Your 5's on this side cancel out because 5 over 5 is 5 divided by 5, which is 1. We're left with 4 plus 4x equals 20. Now we have a regular 2-step equation. So this is actually multi-step. It's more than 2 steps. Usually they don't have, usually you just have maybe 4 plus x on the top. You wouldn't have the 4x. So we actually have a little more to undo here. Angelina, what would I do now that I've gotten it to this step? What would I do next? It's just a normal 2-step. So my choices are to get rid of this 4 or to get rid of this 4. Which one should I do first? First one. How do I get rid of it? Good. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. I get 4x equals 16. Now I'm going to undo this multiplication. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and x equals 4. Okay, the next one actually has this and a fraction at first. Question? You're doing it in reverse. So yes. Okay, the next one, we're going to do the same thing. We have x minus 2 divided by 10. So order of operations would tell us we would subtract first, then divide. So we're going to do the opposite. We're going to undo the division and then undo the subtraction. So we're going to multiply both sides by 10 to start with. I'm going to just go ahead and make it 10 over 1 on this side. My 10s would cross out. I get x minus 2 equals, cross simplifying, 5 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. Now I just have x minus 2 equals 4. So the 1-step equation, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. X equals 6. Okay, next 2 examples are 2 for you to try. The first one is just like the first example that we did. Second one is just like the second example that we did. So you're practicing doing it the same way. So I'm going to pause the video, then we'll go back over this in a couple minutes. Go on. Let's go over the first one. Morgan, what would I do first?
Multiply 4 on the side.
Good. Multiply both sides by 4. And I have 13x plus 1 equals what?
14.
No, 3 times 4.
Oh, 12.
12.
I thought
Negative 12. Okay, Max, what would I do next?
You would subtract 1 from positive 1 and negative 1.
Good. Okay, so I get 13x equals,
Negative 15.
good. And last, Bella, what would I do?
Do 5
Good. And I have x equals what?
-1.
Good. -1 is the correct answer. How many of you got -1? Okay, a lot of you. Good. Okay, next one. Nathan, what would I do first?
Let's put 4 this time.
Good. So I get x minus 6 equals, what do I end up with on the other side? Let's see, can we cross simplify it all?
Yeah.
Yeah? Which way?
8 and 4.
Okay, what would I put instead of 4 here?
2.
No, think about 2 goes into both of those, but so does 4. So how many times does 4 go into itself? Once, and how many times does 4 go into 8? 2. So I have 3 times 1 over 2 times 1, and that is 3 seconds or 3 halves. Good. Okay, now Brian, what would I do next?
Add 6.
Good. Add 6. And what do I get when I add 6 to
7.5.
7.5? Good. I get, you could look at this 2 ways. You could think it's 6 and 3 halves, which would be 7 and 1 half. Or you can change this to 12 over 2 and then add it together that way. So either way, you get 7 and 1 half. Any questions? Okay. Let's look at the last type of problem. You will see a lot of these kinds of problems on Khan Academy, so I wanted to make sure we looked at some examples. There are 2 ways that we could solve this problem. I'm going to show you both ways. So the first thing I could do is I could just distribute first. I could simplify this side. Remember when we did distributing a couple lessons ago when we were doing expressions? So I can do 4 times w, 4 times 1. So I get 4w plus 4 equals 24. Now I have a 2-step equation. Subtracting 4 from both sides gives me 4w equals 20. Dividing both sides by 4 gives me w equals 5. Now that took me 3 steps to solve that equation. Now I'm going to show you how you can do it in only 2 steps. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the problem down here. Now, order of operations tells us that we would add what's inside and then multiply by 4. So if we're doing order of operations in reverse, we could get rid of the multiplication first. We could do that by dividing both sides by 4. When we do, this 4 goes away. We have w plus 1 equals 24 divided by 4 is 6. Subtracting 1 from both sides gives us w equals 5 in less steps than we did the first way. Okay, so I don't care which way you do it. I tend to gravitate toward doing it the first way just because my brain always shoots to that one first. But this way is actually simpler and quicker. So we're going to do the second one the second way that I showed you. So to get rid of this -3, Madison, what would we do?
Divide by 4.
We're on this one now.
Yeah.
We want to
Oh, wait,
divide
divide
by
by
what's
3.
there. By
3.
just 3, -3. There you go. So we're going to divide both sides by -3. We have x minus 2 equals 13. Adding 2 to both sides gives us x equals 15. Okay, rather than doing this one on your own, I'm going to have a volunteer to guide me through that whole process on the next one. Who would like to volunteer? Go ahead, Brian.
Divide by 5.
Okay, what do I end up with?
X plus 9 equals -1.
Good. Now what?
Then you would subtract by 9. And you would get x equals -10.
Very good. Okay, any questions about this? Yes.
No.
Uh-huh.
How do
No, negative divided by negative is positive. 39 divided by 3 is positive 13. And then we added 2. Okay.
Well, I think
Okay, I'll have to look up. Okay, you have 2 exit tickets that I want you to do, or 2 problems that I want you to do as an exit ticket. And then I might change this assignment a little bit. I have to look and see if it's, yeah, I think this is still the same. Yeah, this is your assignment. This is your homework assignment. I also would like you to try, and if you have time after you finish your partner worksheet, I want you to try to get 5 problems correct on Khan Academy, and I have this topic recommended to you already. Okay, so work on the exit ticket and raise your hand when you have it done, and I'll check it before you leave.